This session comes from Recovery Point and Pure Storage together. So presenting for Recovery Point is Vince Wood, who's a cloud engineer. And for Pure Storage, we have Ian Wheat, who's a technical advisor. So thanks to both of you for being here. We'll turn things over to you.
Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. This is a quote that I've heard many times. And the one thing that I want to make sure that we kick this presentation off with is that this is a lesson that not only applies to life, but IT as well. So we're going to dive into that. And I know that was kind of an abrupt introduction, but there's a reason for it. So bear with me. So wait a second. Who are these people? Ian, you know either of these guys on the screen?
I know they seem like a rogues gallery. Maybe this is post office photos.
I'm noticing a theme between the two photos there. I think you and I had talked about that. There might have been the strategy behind that, maybe.
Great gray shirts, red hair. Right, it's a great strategy.
So if you've been working in IT for a while, there's a common set of methodologies that are used when it comes to data protection and business resilience and business continuity. I'll insert all the words. There's a common set of methods used: backups, replicas, offsite copies. We'll go into a lot of that later. But I think the key that we're going to drive home here, and tell me if you think I'm wrong or want to change this in any way, but those are not enough. I think that's what we're driving home today.
Yeah, it's that can be your strategy, your plan on a technical level, but there's a number of human factors involved as well. Obviously, we're dealing with environments managed by people, and we're dealing with applications interacted with by people, and evolving environments. And I think that's one of the key things we're looking to discuss today.
And also, in addition to that, what have we seen that works and doesn't work, and what should you probably consider when you go down this rabbit hole? And I'm sure during this megacast, there's been lots of advice given. The numbers on this screen here, I'm sure anyone that's in our space, Ian, has seen these numbers in some form or another from different vendors, probably with different word and verbiage attached. The shorthand has grown since I first saw it. There's a few extra numbers that have been added. And we're going to let you Google those. We're not going to spend a lot of time on what those numbers are. But just know that Recovery Point, Pure Storage, and many others, we've taken it a little bit further. And one method to increase the madness or the effect of the madness would be immutability. Or put another way, Ian, how would you describe that?
Yeah, it's not just how many copies you're making and where they are. It also matters what they're stored on. So when you're copying your data, it matters. Everybody saw the kind of the newer number added in the 321 or 3210 there is the air-gapped copy, right? Well, in addition to that, you need to think about in each of the places you're putting your data, is it going on a storage platform that has the right capabilities? Can it recover quickly from the environments I need to recover quickly from? Am I working with a warm restore from one tier and cold archive in another? Do I have that quick restore from that warm tier that meets my actual SLAs to the business of being able to restore quickly? And then is it a platform that's economically viable and environmentally friendly? The biggest change in the last couple of years, and the change that I think we're going to see really hit hard in the next 4 to 5 years, is Flash being a default media type. And that means greener. And that means, great, more people in my company are going to be happy with me for changing out storage platforms and putting something more resilient and reliable in. But the point you're starting to hit there, Vince, is the data, once it's stored, has to be untamper-proof, child-proof. Like the windows in my car, when I can't roll them up and down because I hit the child lock, that's really what you need. And it's one thing to say I've stored a copy of data that's immutable, but I really need to make sure that there's a permissions gap, right? That I've got extra controls around who can and cannot destroy snapshots, clones, copies. That's one of the things at Pure Storage that we've really doubled down on, is we call it safe mode. There's additional hoops you got to jump through, and they're configurable, customizable. requires more approvals. And that's the kind of thing where we get back to that human factor, and you've got to be able to put more controls around these things. But that's just one part of it. Vince, where do we need to start?
Well, I started this conversation with a quote we've all heard: "Fail to prepare, prepare to fail." That I can't stress it enough. You gotta prepare, and there's lots of ways to go about that. I have my own opinions on them. I'm sure you do as well. But that's where we need to focus our efforts, because in a lot of cases, we will recover from an incident or an attack, or whatever word you want to use. You'll recover. It may not be to the completeness that the business or organization necessarily wants, or it may be 100% successful, and you just have to tweak some things to make it better. But it all starts with preparation, and that's what we're talking about. One thing that I can't stress enough when it comes to preparation is that you really can't do it alone. Here you and I are talking about the relationship between recovery point systems and providing that level of service and support and collaboration, but we can't do it without Pure Storage and your help. We all have a role to play in this larger objective. And in doing that, there's a whole series of steps that we need to work through, so to speak, or think about in order to work through them. Anything stand out here before I move on, Ian?
I think the thing that's key is expertise consulting. Knowing that you've got the talent and experience in-house, out-of-house, through your partner like Recovery Point. That's why we work together, because Recovery Point has more people who have dealt with this stuff, with dealing with ransomware events, with recovery, day-to-day recovery operations even. I tell my customers a lot, I help you architect and design data platform for storing and recovering, but I haven't been hands-on doing recoveries other than maybe in a lab for years. But my friends at Recovery Point, they do it all the time. So it's that expertise that brings in asking the right questions in the preparation step to make everything goes more smoothly when something bad happens.
And we talk about our Recovery Point doing this all the time. One of the things we stress to all of our customers, and we'll tell this to prospective customers, man, words are hard. Future business partners, another way to put it, is iterative testing. Making sure that you work through the process. You've got basically two goals here. One is to make sure you know the process, know how you're going to recover, what steps are you going to take, drill it until it's instinct. The other point is to find your gaps. The other objective is to find where you're lacking or how you can improve. So as the slide shows, that you reduce the amount of time and the amount of risk as you iterate through this process. It's been said that a DR test, a backup, a replication point, whatever words you want to use, those are point in time snapshots. Those are, okay, as of DR test number 2 on this particular slide, we've reduced our risk from A down to B. Over time, that continues to grow, and you want to keep iterating and reducing that risk over time. Ian, do you have anything to add on that part?
Yeah, the risk grows over time, right? Between those tests. The thing that is also key, I think, in keeping that drift to a minimum is, we talk about like our RPOs and RTOs, right? How when I do recover, how far back in time, how much current data or current operations have I lost because my last copy was 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 6 hours ago, and the cost therein. But also at a broader scale, right? What you're describing here is that I tested 6 months ago. Well, a lot has changed. Maybe not just in the what data exists, but also in what does my environment look like, right? Have more applications been brought into this environment? Have applications grown? Did the automatic mechanisms of my data protection software grasp that I added a workload, that I added volumes, that I added applications, and automatically protect them? If so, great. Do I have that? Is that now documented somewhere? The flip side to expertise is you've got to have tools that help. There's all kinds of great ways to manage that too. But just a couple of good examples are we actually have this thing we call VM analytics in our SaaS-based management portal. We can show customers from the storage layer all the way to the VM layer. What does the topology look like between the two? You can take a screenshot of it. You can export it as a PDF or a spreadsheet, save that somewhere secure, print it out, post it on your wall. You have a copy of that environment details. Now, it's also a point in time, but when you set yourself up with more frequent testing, then you're going to be able to say, yeah, you know what, I'm not drifting. And the other thing that tool does as well is it'll even say, hey, these volumes are not compliant with that 32110 strategy, right? This is being copied one time, not 3 times, or it's being copied not frequently enough, or it doesn't have an air-gapped copy. And so that, again, helps you reduce this drift of configurations, because that's really, that's about fixing your processes.
And it's not just a matter of fixing the process or the technologies. You also need to keep in mind your people. I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with an organization where we iterate through a process, whatever that may be, and halfway through iteration 4, 2 of the team members find a new job, and they take with them some intimate knowledge of the process. So helping to make sure that the entire team has the information necessary for them to succeed is key and core. So we learned through iteration of DR testing what we need to do, how we need to do it. We created documentation, blah, blah, blah. What did we learn along the way? There's a lot of factors that go into one's ransomware recovery plan or incident recovery plan. There's, when you develop the process, there may be certain protections in place, certain mechanisms in place, things like that. And that may change. Or you may get an attacker that gets into your environment without you even knowing, and they're sitting there in your environment doing things that are specifically thwarting protections you have in place. I don't know what statistics. I think there's a statistic somewhere in this information for us that talks about frequency and dwell time and whatnot. But that is a factor. It is something that needs to be taken into consideration when you're talking about business needs, demands, protection, all those kind of things. Ian, you and I talk about RTO and RPO regularly. It's a topic that comes up. Time sensitivity is something that comes up.
And the interesting thing is, can you detect or can you find that malware or that bad actor who's in your environment during their dwell time, right before they push the big red button that ruins your day or your month? One of the interesting things that's changed in the data platform layers, right, is we've become so accustomed to data reduction. So we're all about, I want more economical storage options. So, hey, every bit of data we store gets deduplicated, compressed. We do it, dedupe, compress it, encrypt it at rest, and more. And then, again, reiterating that marriage of people and process and experience with automation in order to help them make it easier. If that reduction ratio drops precipitously or suddenly, if it goes from, hey, you're getting this 5 to 1, oh, hey, we're getting 2 to 1 today out of nowhere on a production system, on a production volume, you're going to get a big flashing alert that says, hey, reduction hit just went to nothing. And it's probably because somebody's encrypting data, because somebody's been in the environment and they're messing with your stuff. So, that's how you have to start reducing all the angles, right? Reducing here, reducing there, reduce the threat here, reduce the threat there, and it pulls together to hopefully minimize risk overall.
And then once you've mitigated risk or found the attacker, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, a core component is going to be communication, making sure that everyone on your team knows where you're at, where you're going, what's the status, and try implementing what a friend of mine calls constant contact. I don't want to dwell on this too long, but it's just a great idea that he shared with me at one point in time, and that is frequent updates. Even if the update only has changed by 2 words, every whatever interval, 15 minutes, hour, day, depends on what the incident is and how you're working through it. But, hey, Ian, we're working through an incident. We'll let you know if we need you. You now know to act potentially. You don't know that it's when it's going to act, but you're going to need to do something. And then every so often that, hey, Ian, we'll still need you, but we're not sure when yet. Hey, boom, boom, boom. Just keeping that communication going, because let's say that you're successful in recovery. Now what? you're moving from the incident, you're moving into, post-incident activities. Many that are much smarter than me have said that it's okay to fail as long as you learn from your failures. Well, it's also okay to succeed, learn from them, keep moving forward. Here's that statistic we were talking about, Ian. The global average cost of a ransomware attack in 2022, so this is a little bit dated, but hey, we're working with what we got here, 4.54 million. How many pure flash arrays would that buy, Ian?
Hopefully you only have to buy, one or two, not spend that full 4.5 million. But if you can avoid that cost, or even just cut it in half, isn't that worth doing, right?
That's a substantial savings.
It is, and I think that the way that you get there, we're talking about you've been through hell, you've been through a bad event here. One of the best ways to learn is analysis, right? That's what you're describing there. It's often called the forensics stage. I'm seeing so many customers or providers like Recovery Point doing clean rooms or bunkers, right? Where that last copy of data, that last archive copy maybe, or the air-gapped copy is in an environment where there's standby compute resources and networking, or they have, we've agreed, hey, within 48 hours of an event, I need to have new environment stood up so that I can examine what happened to this data. Because, I can say, I've got my clean data, I'm restoring it. I need to look at my corrupted data too and figure out what happened. And those there has to be a nice separation between those environments, because one is your new production and it has got to be safe and secure to keep business running, to keep that 4.5 million down or to zero. And then you've got to look at the analysis and say, this is a safe place for me to poke at that corrupted data to see if there's any signatures or footprints leading me back to attackers or to the way that they got in, so that I can document them and close them off.
So we've worked through an incident, we've recovered, maybe we haven't, maybe we've partially recovered. The key next step is going to be gap analysis, and that's making sure that whatever lessons you've learned, whatever gaps you've found, that you address them in the future. You don't have to be 100% successful every single time, but an A or a B is still a win. 80 to 90% is still a win. If you have to redo a little bit of work, that sucks. But guess what? You'll live. We're running a little bit low on time here, so I want to skip through a few things, but I do want to make sure that I hammer home this next point, and that is reviewing your DR test or recovery results. This is one thing that teams that I work with, I see do this regularly, and that is 1 to 2 days after an incident, an issue, a support request, whatever it may be, 1 to 2 days later, schedule a short safe space window. Hey, Ian, we worked through this problem. The flash array threw a failure on, controller B. What did we do right, wrong? How can we improve in the future? Walk through it all, take those notes, and then go do something about it. Come back in 1 to 2 weeks and evaluate. Did we take appropriate, effective actions? Are we setting ourselves up for success moving forward so we don't come back to this and repeat it?
Yeah, I think it's important to do that while the memory's fresh too. You need to have some time for the team to kind of take a breath, but it's got to be too while it's still fairly fresh, because even if you're taking great notes and documenting everything as it's happening and as you're recovering, you want to get things while people have that, the pain is still fresh in their heart of, man, if only I could have saved 30 minutes on this task, it would have been a lot more for my personal life. Maybe I could have logged off sooner and gotten back to the kids or my activities. And all that kind of stuff. But I think you've been through a lot of this, Vince, hands-on or guiding customers through it. Can you share any of the sort of real stories or real incidents and make it real for all of us?
Yes, I will give two. I can do them pretty brief. I know we're running a little over on time, but I can make them brief. So in one situation, there was a company I was working for that we got a support request that a certain server was doing things that it didn't normally do. And the end user was like, I don't know what to do with this, Vince. Can you take a look? And lo and behold, there was a mailbot that had been put on that system, and it was sitting there just cranking away, sending whatever. Now, in that particular incident, the business did not get brought to its knees. There was no ransomware involved there, but it was a case where a system within that organization had been co-opted for another purpose, and that is something that you definitely want to make sure that you avoid. And as you change your systems and as you recover from even minor failures or gaps in your armor, you want to make sure that you not only close that door, but also put a deadbolt on it and make sure that the keys are kept in a safe place. We're talking about preparing for a ransomware attack or a recovery. The part of take and put a deadbolt on the door and secure the keys somewhere other than the door, that's really important. You can't just leave the key in the lock or leave the plan for the recovery in the environment, because guess what? The attackers are going to find it. Guess what? They're going to go make a copy of that recovery so they know exactly what you're going to do. You can't leave it in there. And then improve your systems. There was another company I worked for where they got burned. Ian, we've all gotten burned before. You do something, you're like, I don't want to do that again. So you just blanket block something. We're never going to use this. One particular organization I worked for, they decided that kernel updates on their Linux systems were just too cumbersome to worry about. So we're just never going to reboot our systems. Well,
no.
Ian says no. We'll leave it at that. That's just a bad idea. So, I understand getting burned. I understand failures happen. There's breaks in the armor, but you have to fix them. You have to do so in a smart way that sets you up for success in the future. And that's really the key. We said preparation is the key, but it's setting yourself up for success in the long run.
Yeah, I think I'll make this my closing comment then. One of the key elements there is not just the expertise, right, but maybe pursue dispassionate advice. If you've been through hell, like we said, like you've been through a tough event where you found you were exposed and things went down, the cost in terms of dollars, in terms of hours, etc. The knee-jerk reactions are not your friend. You need to respond quickly, but you need to respond dispassionately. You need to respond with data and evidence, not just quick like, oh yeah, I need to just stop ever doing anything. And that's another place I think where you've got to have people who have been through it before, giving you good, solid advice and holding your hand and documenting the right steps to take.
And that's where RPS can come into the RPS recovery point systems can come into the picture. If anything that we've talked about here is of interest to you, or you want to talk about it further, our contact information is here on the screen. Please reach out. I'm open to have conversations. I'd be willing to bet that Ian can talk tech with you anytime you want to. So don't hesitate to reach out. Is all I'm going to end with. That's all I got, folks. Hopefully the rest of the Actual Tech Media Megacast is of value to you, and don't be a stranger.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, great presentation, Vince and Ian. And I've got the poll question up here for everybody, just about what additional information you'd like from Recovery Point and Pure Storage. But Vince and Ian, are you guys ready for some questions?
I'm ready.
That's great.
All right. I think this first question comes from Chad, and it's a Recovery Point question. What mechanisms does Recovery Point provide to validate the integrity and recoverability of backup data to ensure it can be relied upon in case of an actual incident? So Vince, I guess I'll turn that one over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chad, for the question. I think what's really important to hammer home here is that at Recovery Point Systems, we are not just accepting data from customers. We're actually providing customers opportunities to iterate on that data. What do I mean by that? I mean that when we onboard a customer, we take in data. A short while later, we ask, hey, are you ready to validate this data? Are you ready to validate your solution? We run through an entire process where we spin up a small portion of the environment and we show you, hey, this is the data that you sent us. Is this what you're expecting? And if it is, great, we move forward. If it's not, we tweak a little bit, we move forward. We have a tool that we refer to as BPR, Business Process Resilience. And this allows us to automate and orchestrate the recovery of customer data. We also have clean rooms, isolated environments that customers can come on site at our facility in Maryland if they want to. If they want to do it all remote, that's fine too. We can work from our clean room and with the customer, but we allow for and enable that isolated recovery of data. It's not just, oh yeah, we can recover it, no big deal. And I'm sitting here gesturing off to my side as if you can see me, but it's not. We don't trivialize it. We have systems in place that allow us to make sure that anything that's important to the customer is part of the recovery process. I think, Ian, you wanted to chime in here on this question as well.
Yeah, this also reiterates the importance of where you're storing your recoverable copies, right? Some of the other questions that popped up during our talk were about, how many copies of data, and I responded with, it's less about how many. I mean, how many is important, but what's important is that those copies are immutable, really untamperable, right? That they can't be changed, but they can't be changed in place. They can, another copy could be made, another copy could be stored, but each copy is independently isolated from the next. That's really, really key, because it means that you're going to have obviously some point in time where corruption or encryption made its way in, but you've still got the other points in time that are independent and separate, and they're control isolated as well. And I think the other thing on top of, because I think I'm a big believer in the recovery exercises, the tabletop, sort of virtual can I recover exercises you're talking about. Those are huge. And also between those, are you storing things in a system that's going to tell you that uses some kind of intelligent algorithms that are going to be able to say, hey, this data changed a whole lot. This went from being highly dedupable data to now being completely encrypted or potentially encrypted all of a sudden. Is that sending you an alert and saying, hey, you should look at this? Because that's another way to be able to say, yeah, I've got something looking out for me. I've got people looking out for me, and I've also got quote unquote AI looking out for me.
I love that reference to tabletop exercises as well. I think those can't be emphasized enough. Hey, this next question here kind of relates to, you were talking about sort of the change rate of the data. There's a question here: how can an organization prepare to recover from a ransomware incident or other disaster with a high change rate within the environment? So I don't know which one of you guys might want to tackle that first, but I'll just kind of throw that out there.
I'll take a stab at it. Change rate of data. And typically, that's going to stress all the systems involved, right? You're talking about performance of environments, of compute resources, network connectivity that can handle lots of operations coming across the wire. You're also dealing with storage subsystems, right? The target storage for your backups, as well as production storage that can deal with change rates. I'm a big fan of going the green route. Use Flash. Can be fast, but can also be cost effective. Can be a lower power bill at the same time, which is always nice. But the thing about high change rate is you got to be storing data quickly, acknowledging the change rates, acknowledging the changes, and then moving quickly through those iterations of data. Right. So store it quickly. Make sure that you have a tiered approach to where you can recover from. Warm tier for recovery has taken off so much in the last probably in my experience, about 8 years. The warm recovery or even hot recovery tier was unheard of, 8 or 9 years ago. Flash was one of the major things that helped change that, the economics coming down. But, the business needs have also changed, right? Sometimes you just need to spend a little bit to have another tier that you can recover from more quickly. So if it's a high change rate, you've got a warmer tier to recover from, and then a colder tier to recover from. Then you're kind of protecting yourself more for having a more recent point in time to recover from.
Super.
And I will just add to that real quick, Scott, if you let me.
Please do.
It's simple phrase. The higher the change rate, the more often your data protection scheme needs to be acting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Next question comes from Paul, and we get this a lot. Where does cyber insurance fit into a post-incident plan, and how should that aspect be prepared in advance?
I'll take this one. I think I'm going to take it in a way that's probably not expected, but independent of the incident that one is facing, the more prepared you are, the more research you've done in advance, the better. So when it comes to cybersecurity insurance, go talk to your business and say, hey, how do we want to approach ransomware protection or cybersecurity protection? And if the response that your business gives you is, well, we'll just get some insurance for that. Okay, great. What is your insurance provider going to ask of you? If you look at the presentations that were given today, I saw several times where it was brought up that cybersecurity insurance is going to require that you do certain things in advance to make sure you're not just putting all the responsibility on them. In other words, you're going to need to train your users. You're going to need to put mitigations in place so that all the keys to the kingdom aren't in one system. They're not all in clear text in your production network. We talked about it in our presentation, having documentation that is separate from your production systems. So where does it fit into a post-incident plan? From the beginning. You need to be planning for it now. And if you really want the insurance kind of package for it, go look what they're going to require and then start implementing that stuff now before it becomes a problem.
Okay, great. Next question is from Pam, who's wondering, what's the average response time for incident response? How quickly are things typically resolved using Recovery Point?
So we have teams that are on staff. Recovery Point has teams that are on staff 24/7. So if a customer puts in a request, a DR request, or all hands on deck, DR, we're down, however you want to phrase it, we have teams that are on staff 24/7. So I think our response time is pretty low. I'm not going to give you a number because I can't guarantee that, but quickly, if that's sufficient.
Okay.
I think in addition to quickly, this also feeds into the your planning, right? Like, how quickly do you need your partner in disaster recovery to be able to respond, and have you had that conversation up front in the design phase of your DR and your backup strategies, right? Because if you haven't set that up front, if you hadn't said, hey, I need a response in X number of seconds, hours, minutes, days, weeks, then you can't have designed the infrastructure and the people, procedures around them to be able to get to that point.
Okay. All right. Time for just a couple more questions. This is kind of a fun one. What's the ultimate air gap solution?
Scott, I don't think we have time for pie in the sky, sir.
Fair
Well,
enough.
I think the ultimate would be, can you make a copy, unplug it from everything, maybe even unplug it from a power source, put it inside a lead lined vault. But the problem there is that's only as good as it is recent, right? The longer it sits, the harder it gets. So air gap is such a the term air gap now is kind of like cloud was 10 years ago. What does it really mean? It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It's about isolating controls. It's about isolating access, and you've got to open or let down the drawbridge at least every so often to let new data in. So the best air gap is the one that has the drawbridge that goes up and down as quickly as possible and as infrequently as you can tolerate.
That's a realistic answer and a great one. Appreciate that. So we are running out of time, but if somebody wants to get started with especially the joint solution here, or find out more, what do you recommend?
Give us a call. Shoot us an email.
Yep, our contact information is in our presentation, and I'm sure a copy of it can be given again if someone wants it. But my answer is reach out. We're human. Reach out. We'll talk to you.
All right. Tremendous.
Absolutely.
Well, Ian and Vince, thank you so much for being here and bringing us up to speed on this joint solution. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Enjoy.